My name is Ingrid Myers. I am 32 years old. Last Mother's Day, my fiancé's mother stood on a stage in front of 500 people, pointed at my mom, and said 6 words that ended a family. She said them into a microphone. She said them while smiling. And my fiancé, the man I was supposed to marry in October, laughed. I did not yell. I did not throw a glass. I took my mother's hand, rose to my feet, and walked out of that ballroom without a single glance back. Then I sat in the parking lot and made one phone call. 3 words. Do it. Now, what Patricia Carrington did not know, what none of them knew, was that I had spent the last 6 months building a file. And that file had her name on every single page. But I need to start at the beginning, because that phone call only makes sense if you understand the 6 months that came before it. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories, the channel where dignity always wins. If you have ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting someone you love, this one is for you. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. It started the way these things always start, with a dinner invitation I should have declined. I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Apartment 4C, 3rd floor. No elevator. My mom worked the night shift at Barnum Elementary, not as a teacher, but as the school nurse. $38,000 a year, and she stretched it like it was twice that. Dinner was cereal most nights, not because we were starving, but because Mom did not get home until 11. I learned early how to pour milk without spilling. I did homework under the kitchen light while she slept on the couch with her shoes still on. She never complained. Not once. When I earned the scholarship to UConn, she ironed my one good blouse the night before every campus visit. She drove me in a car that rattled above 55 miles per hour and dropped me off at the admissions building like she was delivering me to the front door of a future she had built with her bare hands. I studied accounting, passed all 4 sections of the CPA exam on the first attempt, and was hired at a Big 4 firm in Hartford. I spent 6 years auditing nonprofits and government contracts. Then I went independent. Forensic accounting, fraud examination, the kind of work where you read spreadsheets the way detectives read crime scenes. By 32, I was earning $95,000 a year. Not wealthy, not struggling. Comfortable in a way my mother never was, which had always been the entire point. I thought the hard part was behind me. I thought the years of cereal dinners and ironed blouses had earned me a seat at a table where people would see my work and respect it. I was wrong by approximately $340,000. I met Derek Carrington at a professional mixer in Stamford. He was 34, ran donor relations for the Carrington Family Foundation, and carried the kind of effortless confidence that comes from never having had to prove yourself to anyone. He smiled with his whole face. He asked me questions and genuinely listened. On our 3rd date, he told me his family ran a foundation that funded after-school programs across 3 Connecticut counties, an annual budget of $2.8 million. His mother was board chair. His father was treasurer. I told him my mother was a retired school nurse from Bridgeport. He said, "That is the most important job in any school." I believed him. 6 months in, he brought me home to meet the family. The Carrington house sat on 2 acres in Greenwich. 6 bedrooms, a circular driveway, hydrangeas trimmed as though they had a personal stylist. Patricia opened the door in cashmere. Howard stood behind her in a blazer with monogrammed cuffs. Dinner was salmon on fine china with real silver. Patricia asked about my family. I told her my father had left when I was 4. She paused, set down her wine glass, and let the silence stretch until it became a statement. Howard asked what my mother did for a living. I said she was a retired school nurse. He nodded once and redirected the conversation to wine regions. Then Patricia laughed, high-pitched and practiced, the kind of laugh that does not come from amusement but from a deliberate performance. "How charming," she said. That laugh, I would hear it again in front of 500 people. Over 14 months, Patricia constructed a pattern so consistent you could have set a calendar by it. The bridal shower came first. My mother was not on the guest list. When I asked about it, Patricia tilted her head and said, "Oh, I assumed she would not be comfortable with our crowd." She said it the way you might explain why a child had not been invited to an adult gathering, gently, with pity sewn into every syllable. Christmas came next. Patricia handed me a gift bag with a $400 wool coat from Nordstrom. She handed my mother a $15 drugstore candle, in front of everyone. My mom said, "Thank you." Patricia said, "I thought something simple would suit her." Then the seating chart. I overheard Patricia on the phone with Derek 3 weeks before the gala. Her voice was low, but the kitchen carried sound. "She is lovely, but that mother, Derek, I promised the Wentworths the seating chart would keep her away from them. I will not have her embarrassing us." I stood in the hallway with a glass of water and listened to my fiancé say absolutely nothing. Aunt Vivian started sending me links, articles about how to navigate established families, what to expect when you marry into wealth. She signed every message with a smiley face, as if condescension came with an emoji discount. I told Derek about all of it. The guest list, the candle, the seating chart, the texts. He rubbed the back of his neck the way he always did when he wanted a conversation to dissolve. "That is just how she is," he said. "She means well." 5 words. That was his entire defense of my mother. My mom came to visit on a Tuesday. She sat at my kitchen table and flipped through the bridal magazines I had stacked near the toaster. She did not ask about the seating chart. She did not mention the candle. She simply turned the pages slowly, pausing at a photograph of a bride and her mother walking down an aisle together. "You happy, baby?" I looked at her, 58 years old, hands roughened by decades of bandaging scraped knees and checking fevers, hair silvering at the temples, eyes steady and clear. I said. She set the magazine down quietly. "Then I am happy." She knew. My mother was not naive. She had survived 22 years of night shifts, a husband who vanished, and a system that paid her less than a starting barista at the coffee shop around the corner. She could read a room faster than I could read a balance sheet. She reached into her purse and produced a small box. Inside was a brooch, a cluster of tiny pearls on a gold-toned pin. She turned it slowly in the light. "For the gala," she said. "I want to look nice for your night." $12 from the Goodwill clearance bin. I knew because I had seen the price sticker she had forgotten to peel from the bottom. My throat tightened. I almost cried. I did not. "It is beautiful, Mom." She pinned it to her blouse and smiled. Then she said something I did not fully understand until much later. "You do not owe them your peace, baby." My mother had survived everything life had thrown at her. She should not have had to survive Patricia Carrington, too. The Carrington Family Foundation had existed for 19 years. It funded after-school tutoring, summer reading programs, and weekend enrichment camps across 3 Connecticut counties. $2.8 million in annual donations. A spring gala each year. A newsletter with Patricia's photograph on the cover, her smiling beside children who depended on the money she helped raise. On paper, it looked like everything a community foundation should be. Derek asked me to help in February, 4 months before the gala. The annual audit was approaching, and their regular accountant had retired. "Just a quick review," he said. "You are the best at this. Pro bono, as a favor to the family." I agreed. I wanted to help. I wanted Patricia to see me as capable, competent, someone who genuinely belonged at that table. I know how that sounds now. The foundation's office was in downtown Stamford, 2nd floor above a real estate agency. Derek gave me a key and pointed me toward the filing cabinet in the corner. Manila folders, each one tabbed in red along the top edge. I opened the first folder. Vendor invoices, payment authorizations, bank routing confirmations, standard nonprofit paperwork. The first invoice looked fine. The second looked fine. The third looked fine. The fourth did not. It was issued by a company called Hartfield Consulting. $113,000 for strategic advisory services. I turned the page. Same company, same amount. The year before, and the year before that. 3 years. 3 identical invoices. $339,000 paid to a single vendor I had never encountered. I pulled the folder from the cabinet, placed it on the desk, and stared at the red tab pointing upward like a small warning flag. I searched for Hartfield Consulting that night. No website, no LinkedIn presence, no Better Business Bureau listing, no state LLC filing in Connecticut, New York, or Massachusetts. I widened the search. Delaware, the state where shell companies go to disappear. And there it was. Hartfield Consulting, LLC, registered 14 months after the Carrington Foundation's first fiscal year. Registered agent, a mailbox service in Wilmington. No employees, no office, no phone number. I pulled the bank routing numbers from the payment authorizations and cross-referenced them against the foundation's disbursement records. Every payment to Hartfield flowed into a single account at a regional bank in Fairfield County. The account was held under the name Delanto. Delanto was Patricia's maiden name. 3 years. $340,000 in payments from a children's charity to a shell company owned by the woman who chaired its board. In my line of work, there is a precise word for this. Embezzlement. I did not panic. I did not call anyone. I made copies of every invoice, every routing slip, every authorization form. I photographed each folder. I constructed a file, digital and physical, complete with a table of contents and a chronological timeline. This is what forensic accountants do. We build files. We let numbers tell stories that people cannot lie their way out of. When I finished, it was 2 a.m. I sat at my desk with the folder closed in front of me and considered what came next. I had 2 choices: tell Derek and allow him to address it privately, or go directly to the authorities. I chose Derek first. That was my mistake. I showed Derek the file on a Saturday morning. His coffee went cold on the counter while he turned through the pages. His expression shifted 3 times. Confusion first, then recognition, then something I had never seen on his face before. Fear. There has to be an explanation, he said. There is, I replied. It is called fraud. He closed the folder, rubbed the back of his neck, rose from his seat, walked to the window, and stood there for a long moment staring at nothing. Let me talk to them, he said. Give me 3 months before the annual audit. We will resolve it internally, quietly. No one has to know. I should have said no. I know that now. But I loved him. And love has a way of granting extensions to people who have not earned them. 3 months, I said. If nothing changes, I go to the board. He agreed, nodded slowly as though waking from something, kissed my forehead, and left for his parents' house. I watched his car disappear down the street and silently counted every reason I should have called the state attorney general right then and there. After that, things began to shift. Derek started keeping his distance. He canceled 2 dinner plans in a row. He stopped mentioning his parents. When I asked about the foundation, he redirected the conversation. One evening he came over for takeout and noticed the manila folder sitting on my kitchen table, red tabs facing up. What is that? He asked. Work, I said. He stared at it for 3 seconds too long, then opened his noodles. 3 months. 90 days. That is what I gave him. 90 days of hoping that the man I loved would choose the truth over the family that had raised him. Month 1. Derek told me he had spoken to his parents. I asked what they said. He told me they were looking into it. I pressed for specifics. He said he did not have any yet. I let it go. Month 2. I reviewed the foundation's disbursement records again. Hartfield Consulting had received another $28,000, authorized, paid, and cleared. Whatever Derek had told his parents, it had not slowed Patricia down by a single dollar. I showed him the new invoice. He went silent. I told my dad, he finally said. He called it a bookkeeping error. A bookkeeping error does not establish a shell company. Derek had nothing to say to that. He picked up his keys and said he needed air. Month 3. The annual audit was 6 weeks away. The Mother's Day Gala was 2 weeks after that. I sat Derek down at my kitchen table, same folder, same red tabs, and laid everything out plainly. Either you never told them, or you told them and they ignored you. Either way, $340,000 is still missing from a charity that serves children, and I am the only person in this equation with a professional license at stake. He stared at the folder. I will handle it. You had 90 days to handle it. That night, I called my colleague at the firm. His name was Webb, a forensic audit partner who had worked the state's nonprofit fraud unit before going private. I told him to finalize the report and hold it. I need one more thing, I said. A public event. Something on the record. The Mother's Day Gala was 18 days away. I was not waiting any longer. I was positioning. Patricia announced the gala's agenda in the Foundation's April newsletter. This year's theme was The Mothers Who Shaped Us, a tribute segment, a slideshow, a speech from the board chair. Patricia herself would be honoring the mothers of the Carrington community. 500 guests were confirmed. Local politicians, school board members, foundation donors, 2 reporters from the Hartford Courant, and the entire social circle that orbited Patricia like planets around a very expensive sun. She called me on a Wednesday 11 days before the event. Her voice was smooth and measured, the way it always was when she was about to say something quietly dismissive. Your mother is welcome to attend, of course. Just make sure she is comfortable. Large events can be overwhelming for people who are not accustomed to them. She will be at my table, I said. A pause. Of course. Aunt Vivian texted me that same afternoon. Heard your mom is coming to the gala. So brave of her. Smiley face. Heart emoji. I set my phone on the counter and stared at it for a full minute. Then I picked it up and almost called Webb. My thumb hovered over his name. Not yet. The audit file was in my car. A copy was secured in Webb's office safe. A third copy sat on an encrypted drive in my desk drawer. I had been constructing this for 6 months. 12 more days would not change the mathematics. But standing in my kitchen with Vivian's message glowing on my screen, I made a decision. If Patricia wanted to place 500 people in a room and hand herself a microphone, she was perfectly welcome to it. The gala was 9 days away. The file was ready. The night before the event, my mom tried on her dress in my bathroom. JCPenney clearance rack, navy blue, simple cut. It suited her better than she had anticipated. She smoothed the fabric over her hips and studied herself in the mirror. Not bad for 58, she said. She fastened the pearl brooch above her heart, $12, plastic pearls on a gold-toned pin. Under the bathroom light, they caught just enough warmth to pass for something genuine. You look beautiful, Mom. She waved me off. I look clean. That is good enough. We settled on the couch afterward. She found a cooking show, something about bread. I watched her watch it, and I thought about everything I was carrying that she knew nothing about. The manila folder. The shell company. The 3 months of silence from a man who had promised he would take care of it. You nervous? She asked. No, Mom. I am ready. She glanced at me, held my gaze for just a moment, then turned back to the screen. Good. We did not discuss Patricia. We did not revisit seating charts or candle gifts, or the word that had not yet been spoken into a microphone. We simply sat there, side by side, watching a woman on television knead dough like she had all the time in the world. My mom drifted off at 9:30. I draped the throw blanket over her and turned off the television. I stood in the darkened living room and listened to her breathe. That was the last ordinary night. After tomorrow, nothing between us and the Carringtons would ever be ordinary again. The Waverly Club sat on 4 acres of manicured grounds in the hills above Greenwich. Valet parking, stone columns, a ballroom configured for 500 guests that evening. Round tables draped in white linen, orchid centerpieces, a polished stage with a podium and a projection screen. My mom and I arrived at 6:15. She had the brooch pinned above her heart. I wore a charcoal dress and flats. We were assigned table 14, near the back, positioned between the emergency exit and the wait station. The Wentworths were at table 2. Patricia took the stage at 7:45. She wore ivory. Her hair was set in the kind of style that requires 2 hours and someone else's hands. She stood at the podium with the composed authority of a woman who had been running this event for 19 years. Tonight, she said, we honor the mothers who shaped us. The slideshow began. Black and white photographs of Carrington matriarchs, Howard's mother in pearls at a garden party, Patricia's mother, or the curated version of her she chose to present, holding a bouquet at a country club entrance. Each photograph accompanied by a warm caption. Applause after every slide. Then Patricia paused. She looked out across the room. Her eyes found table 14. Of course, she said, not everyone here tonight came from the same tradition. A ripple of uneasy laughter from Vivian's table. Derek, seated at table 3, smiled. Patricia lifted her chin. She looked at my mother, at the navy dress, at the plastic brooch, at the woman who had bandaged 1,000 children's scraped knees for $38,000 a year. And she said it. That is not a mother. That is trash. The room fractured. Half the guests gasped. The other half went completely still. Vivian clapped twice before catching herself. The sound bounced off the chandelier. Derek laughed. Full, audible, unmistakable. Patricia's laugh followed. High-pitched, practiced, polished over decades of performing superiority in rooms full of people too well-mannered to object. 500 people heard it. My mother did not crumble. She did not cry. She folded her napkin, placed it on the table, and looked at me. Her hands were trembling. The pearl brooch caught the overhead light, and for one brief moment, it looked entirely real. She did not say a word. She did not need to. I did not stand up quickly. I drew a breath, counted to 3, folded my own napkin, and set it beside my plate. Then I reached across the table and took my mother's hand. We rose together. I did not look at Patricia. I did not look at Derek. I did not scan the room for sympathy or outrage, or whatever 500 faces were registering in that moment. I looked at the exit. We walked slow and steady. My heels clicked against the marble floor, and the only other sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the complete absence of every voice in that ballroom. No one stopped us. No one said a word. The parking lot was dark and cool. May in Connecticut, the kind of night where the air carries the scent of cut grass and diesel from the valet stand. My mom stood beside the car and looked at me. "I am sorry, baby." "Do not," I said. "Do not you dare apologize." She pressed her lips together and nodded. I pulled my phone from my clutch, opened my contacts, and scrolled to W. He picked up on the second ring. He was still at the office. The man worked later than anyone I had ever known. "File the report with the AG tonight." A pause. "You sure? Do it now." "Understood." I slipped the phone back into my clutch, helped my mom into the car, and drove out of the Waverly Club parking lot with the headlights cutting through the darkness and neither of us saying a single word. The radio played soft jazz from a station neither of us had selected. By morning, the Connecticut Attorney General's office had the Carrington Foundation file sitting on a desk in Hartford. I was at my mom's kitchen table at midnight, still in my dress, still carrying the scent of orchid centerpieces and a regret that was never mine to hold. She brought me tea. Neither of us spoke for a long time. If you have ever had to protect someone you love from people who were supposed to become your family, if you have ever made the most difficult right decision of your life, drop a comment. Tell me. I want to hear it. The following morning, my phone buzzed at 7:14. Derek had added me to a family group chat by accident. He had meant to remove me. I opened it and read backward through the night. Patricia had posted at 11:42. Well, that was dramatic. Vivian at 11:51. I cannot believe she just walked out like that. So embarrassing. Howard at 12:03. Let her cool down. She will come back. They always do. Derek at 12:15. She is overreacting. Mom barely said anything. I read that line 3 times. Mom barely said anything. She had called my mother trash in front of 500 people, into a microphone from a stage, and his entire summary was barely said anything. I screenshotted every message. Calm, methodical, precisely the way I would document any audit trail. Then I scrolled further. There was one more message sent earlier than the rest, from Patricia to Derek only, forwarded into the group chat by mistake. Timestamp, 6:18 in the evening, before the gala had even begun. Make sure the nurse does not sit near the Hendersons. I will not have her embarrass us again. The nurse. Not Ellen. Not your future mother-in-law. Not even Ingrid's mom. The nurse. I stared at that word on my screen until the letters stopped looking like letters. Patricia had not insulted my mother on a sudden impulse after too much wine. She had planned it. The seating, the tribute segment, the timing. The word trash was not a slip. It was a conclusion she had reached long before she ever stepped onto that stage. The group chat remained open on my phone for 3 days. I never replied. I never needed to. I had something far more valuable than a response. I had their own words. Derek appeared at my apartment the following afternoon. He had not called ahead. He knocked twice and stood in the hallway with his hands in his pockets and the expression of a man who had rehearsed a speech during the drive over. "We need to talk." I let him in. I did not offer coffee. I did not sit down. "My mom is devastated," he said. She has not stopped crying since the gala. I let that settle in the air between us for a moment. Your mom called mine trash in front of 500 people. Derek, she did not mean it that way. You know how she gets after wine. She said it into a microphone. There is no did not mean it. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Then his tone hardened. What did you do? Webb called my dad's office this morning. Something about an audit. I did what I should have done 3 months ago. You went to the authorities without telling me. I told you 6 months ago. You asked me to wait. I waited. You told me it was being handled. It was not. Derek's eyes drifted toward the kitchen table. The manila folder sat there, red tabs facing up. He stared at it the way a person stares at something they have been hoping will simply vanish if ignored long enough. You are going to destroy my family, he said. Your family destroyed mine first. He stood there for 10 seconds. I counted. Then he turned, walked to the door, and left without pulling it shut behind him. I closed it for him. Then I locked it. The deadbolt clicked, and the apartment fell quiet again. Vivian moved fast. 48 hours after the gala, she had contacted everyone within the Carrington orbit with a version of events that bore no resemblance to what had actually taken place. The story Vivian was circulating, Ingrid Myers, a woman from Bridgeport with no family money and an accounting degree she had used to wedge herself into the Carrington circle, was now attempting to extort the family. She had fabricated financial documents. She was bitter about a wedding that was not moving forward quickly enough. She wanted money. The story Vivian was not telling, $340,000 in phantom vendor payments, traced to an account held under Patricia's maiden name. My work phone rang on a Wednesday. A client I had served for 2 years told me she needed to pause our engagement. Another client canceled a scheduled meeting without rescheduling. A mutual contact from the Stanford Professional Network sent me a text. Is it true you are suing them for money? I did not respond to any of it. I went to work. I ate lunch at my desk. I filed quarterly reports for 3 other clients. After work, I drove to my mom's house and sat at her kitchen table while she made chicken and rice. People are talking, she said. Let them. She looked at me, set a plate down in front of me. You eating? Yes, Mom. She sat across from me, and we ate without discussing Patricia or Vivian or the quiet, deliberate dismantling of my professional reputation being carried out by a woman whose sole qualification was being married to Howard's brother. Vivian had enjoyed 72 hours of uncontested narrative control. I had 6 years of invoices, 3 copies of a forensic audit file, and the patience of a woman who grew up eating cereal for dinner. Howard called on a Thursday morning. 8:17. His number appeared as H. Carrington. I had saved it during the engagement as a gesture of courtesy I no longer felt. His voice was calm and measured, the voice of a man who had spent 40 years converting confrontation into negotiation. Ingrid, I believe we can resolve this like adults. I am listening. The bookkeeping issue has been corrected. Patricia has repaid the discrepancy from personal funds. The foundation's accounts are whole. When did she repay it? Silence. This week. After the report was filed, Mr. Carrington. Longer silence. I could hear him breathing. Filed. With whom exactly? The Charitable Trust Unit. They handle nonprofit fraud investigations in Connecticut. That was unnecessary. His voice dropped. And vindictive. $340,000 from a children's program is not a bookkeeping error, Mr. Carrington. It is theft. You will regret this. Noted. I hung up and set the phone on my desk. My hands were completely steady. Howard knew the bookkeeping error explanation he had fed Derek 3 months ago was never confusion. It was a cover story. He had personally signed every one of those authorization forms. His name sat at the bottom of each page, right beside the routing number that led directly to his wife's maiden name account. He was not calling to negotiate. He was calling to determine how much I knew and whether I could be frightened into silence. The answer to the first question was everything. The answer to the second was no. My phone did not ring again that day. I packed Derek's belongings on a Friday. It filled 1 box. A Harvard sweatshirt he had draped over my chair. 2 books about wine regions he would never complete. A phone charger. A pair of running shoes with the laces still tied. The The small accumulations of someone who was gradually becoming part of your life and then simply stopped. The ring sat on my nightstand. 2.1 carats, platinum setting, a diamond that captured light from every possible angle. Patricia had selected it herself. She had directed Derek to the exact jeweler, specified the cut, chosen the setting that would photograph beautifully at the engagement party she had already begun organizing before Derek had even asked the question. I placed the ring on top of the box. I drove to Derek's office, a shared workspace in downtown Stamford with glass walls and an excess of natural light. He was not at his desk. I left the box with the receptionist. There was a note folded beneath the ring. I loved you, but I do not owe anyone my integrity. He called twice that afternoon. I let both calls go to voicemail. He did not leave a message either time. I drove to my mom's house. She opened the door and her eyes dropped immediately to my left hand. Bare ring finger. No diamond catching the porch light. She did not ask what had happened. She did not say I told you so. She did not recite the list of warning signs she had quietly catalogued over 14 months and never once mentioned. She simply stepped aside and said, "Come in, baby." I made soup. We ate soup. We watched the evening news. She fell asleep on the couch at 9, and I draped the same blanket over her from the night before the gala. The engagement ended on a Tuesday. The investigation began on a Wednesday. The Connecticut Attorney General's Charitable Trust Unit opened a formal inquiry on a Wednesday morning in late May. I know this because I received a call at 9:06 from an investigator named Ruiz, who asked if I had time to discuss my filing. I had time. I provided everything: bank routing numbers, Hartfield Consulting's Delaware LLC registration, 3 years of authorization forms bearing Howard's signature on every page, the complete forensic timeline showing $113,000 per year flowing from a children's charity into an account held under Patricia's maiden name. Ruiz listened without a single interruption. When I finished, he said, "Thank you. We have assigned this to our active investigations unit. How long will it take?" I cannot offer a timeline, but the documentation is thorough. That helps considerably. The numbers spoke. They always do. Numbers do not require a microphone, or a stage, or 500 witnesses. They simply need someone willing to read them. The following week, a brief article appeared in the Hartford Courant. Back section, 4 paragraphs. Carrington Foundation under review by State Attorney General. No names, no specific details, just enough to signal that something was moving. I did not celebrate. I went to work. I filed 3 client reports. I ate a sandwich at my desk. I called my mom and asked about her garden. "Tomatoes are coming in early this year," she said. "Save me some." Always. I hung up and looked at the newspaper clipping I had printed and pinned above my desk. For paragraphs buried on page 9. By the time this was finished, it would be the front page. Patricia retained a PR firm within 72 hours of the Courant article. A polished woman in a gray suit released a statement on behalf of the Carrington Family Foundation. The foundation welcomes transparency and is fully cooperating with all inquiries. Cooperating. Patricia used that word like a shield rather than what it actually was, an admission that there was something worth cooperating about. Behind the statement, Patricia was working the phones. I learned this from the most unexpected source. An HR contact at the Big Four firm where I had spent 6 years called me on a Monday. "Just so you know," she said, "someone named Patricia Carrington contacted us last week requesting access to your personnel file. We declined." She had asked for my personnel file, claiming she was conducting a reference check. They told her they do not release employee records to private individuals. She was not pleased. I thanked the HR contact and ended the call. Patricia was searching for something. A disciplinary notation, an unfavorable review, anything she could weaponize to discredit the woman who had uncovered her shell company. She would find nothing. 6 years. A clean record. 2 promotions. 3 days later, my mom called. "I received a letter," she said. "From Patricia. Handwritten. Cream stationery." I drove over and read it at her kitchen table. "Dear Elaine, I am sorry for any misunderstanding. I was nervous that evening. You know how speeches can go wrong. I hope we can put this behind us. Family is everything. Warmly, Patricia." I read it twice. Set it down. Mom, she spelled your name wrong. Ellen looked at the letter. Elaine. She read it once, folded it neatly, and placed it in the recycling bin. 14 months. She had never learned my mother's name. 14 months in my life, and she did not know the name of the woman who raised me. She called her the nurse. She called her trash. And when she finally committed words to paper, she wrote, Dear Elaine, my mother's name is Ellen. If that single detail does not tell you everything you need to know about Patricia Carrington, keep listening, because it only gets worse. Georgia Hall called me on a Tuesday evening. I did not recognize the number. She introduced herself as the event coordinator who had managed the Mother's Day Gala, 6 years running every Carrington event, from the spring fundraiser to the holiday auction. I heard about the investigation, she said. I want you to know something. I sat down. Go ahead. I was backstage when she said it. The venue records all main stage audio for liability purposes. Every speech, every announcement, every toast, it is all archived on file, including what she said about your mother. I closed my eyes. You have a recording. The venue has a recording. Standard procedure. The microphone feed goes directly to a backup drive. I can connect you with the facility manager. Why are you telling me this? Georgia was quiet for a brief moment. I have worked 6 Carrington events. Last year, during the scholarship awards ceremony, Patricia humiliated a 17-year-old girl in front of the entire room. Called her a charity case who should be grateful simply to be there. The girl cried. Nobody said a word. Nobody ever does. Patricia writes the checks. People look the other way. Georgia offered to provide the audio file and a written statement to the AG investigator. She would also testify to the pattern. 6 years of events, 6 years of watching Patricia treat people as props in an elaborate performance about her own generosity. I should have done this years ago, she said. You are doing it now. I hung up and sat in the darkness for a long time. The venue recording was not a secret tape. It was not something I had arranged or orchestrated. It was standard liability procedure. Every event space in Connecticut maintained main stage audio. The truth had been on file the entire time. Nobody had thought to ask for it until now. 2 a.m. The apartment was dark. I could not sleep. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my camera roll. There were photographs I had not yet deleted. The ones from before. Derek and me on Cape Cod, sand on our feet, both of us laughing at something I could no longer remember. A selfie at a restaurant in the North End. A photo he had taken of me asleep on the couch with a book resting on my chest. I loved him. That part was entirely true. Not the foundation, not the Greenwich house, not the access to a life I had never imagined for myself. I loved the man who asked me questions and genuinely listened. Who drove to Bridgeport to have dinner with my mom and ate her meatloaf without a single complaint. Who once fell asleep holding my hand on an ordinary Tuesday night as though it was the most natural thing in the world. That man was real. He simply was not strong enough to exist outside of his own family. I stared at those photographs long enough that the screen dimmed and I had to tap it awake again. Had I gone too far? Should I have simply walked out of the gala and never looked back? Should I have left the $340,000 buried beneath red-tabbed folders and Hartfield consulting invoices? My mom's voice came to me, not from a phone call or a specific memory, but just the quiet shape of words she had spoken at my kitchen table, holding a $12 brooch as though it were made of something precious. You do not owe them your peace, baby. I deleted the photographs, closed the app, and made coffee. I had not gone too far. I had gone exactly far enough. The Carrington Foundation Board convened an emergency session in mid-June. 9 members plus the AG investigator, a conference room in the Foundation's Stamford office, fluorescent lighting, bottled water, legal pads, and the hushed tension of people who were about to learn that the organization they had trusted had been robbed from within. Investigator Ruiz presented the preliminary findings. 3 years of payments to Hartfield Consulting, LLC. $340,000 in total. The vendor had no employees, no office, no evidence of any services whatsoever rendered. All payments routed to a personal bank account registered under the maiden name of the board chair. The room did not erupt. It contracted. 9 faces quietly rearranging themselves around a fact they could not take back. 2 board members resigned on the spot, rose from their chairs, gathered their belongings, and walked out without saying anything beyond, "I had no knowledge of this," which was likely the truth. That is precisely how embezzlement operates. It conceals itself in the spaces between the people who should have been watching. Howard made an attempt. He sat at the far end of the table in a navy blazer with those monogrammed cuffs and said, "This is a family foundation. These are internal matters." The board chair, an independent member named Caldwell, a retired judge, looked at Howard steadily over the rim of her glasses. "Mr. Carrington, you are the treasurer. These payments were authorized under your signature." Howard's face went gray. Not red, not defiant. Gray. The precise color of a man watching a door seal shut that he cannot reopen. Patricia was not in the room. She had been asked not to attend. The board meeting lasted 3 hours. The vote took 11 minutes. Unanimous. 7-0, the 2 who had resigned having already departed. 7-0. Patricia removed as board chair. Howard removed as treasurer. Both stripped of all foundation access, accounts, email, office keys, donor lists. Effective immediately. The board mandated a full referral to the Attorney General for further action. An external auditor would be retained to review every transaction over the preceding 5 years. The Foundation's programs, the tutoring, the summer reading camps, the weekend enrichment sessions, would continue under interim leadership. The children would still be served. That mattered to me more than anything else decided in that room. After the vote, I was told what unfolded in the hallway. Georgia Hall described it to me later, her voice flat and precise, the way it becomes when someone is recounting something they wish they had not witnessed. Patricia stood outside the conference room door, crying, but the words leaving her mouth were not, "I am sorry." They were, "How dare they?" Vivian was beside her, gripping her arm. "They cannot do this to you, Pat. You built that foundation." Patricia's chin trembled. "I gave 19 years. 19 years. And this is how they repay me." Howard stood 10 feet away, silent, staring at the carpet with his hands at his sides like a man attending a funeral who had forgotten whose funeral it was. The manila folder, the original red tab still intact, sat on the conference table inside the room where the vote had just been cast, its tabs pointing upward like small markers recording the exact coordinates of a collapse. I was not in that hallway. I was not in that conference room. I was at my desk in my office 22 miles away, reviewing a quarterly report for a client who paid on time. The file did the work. That is what files do. The Hartford Courant published it on the front page. Carrington Foundation founders ousted amid embezzlement probe. 12 paragraphs, 2 photographs, one of the Carrington house, one of the foundation's annual report cover bearing Patricia's smiling face. An anonymous board member was quoted. The foundation was funding a family lifestyle, not children's programs. The 500 people who had been in that ballroom on Mother's Day, the politicians, the donors, the school board members, the 2 reporters who had originally been covering the event for the Society column, now knew everything. They knew that the woman who had stood on a stage and called my mother trash had been stealing from the very charity she performed such generosity for. My phone lit up continuously. Messages from numbers I did not recognize, from people who had been at table 6 or table 11 or standing near the bar when it happened. I was there that night. "I am so sorry I did not say anything. Your mother deserved far better. We all should have spoken up. Thank you." Georgia Hall's written statement was referenced directly in the article. The venue audio recording was confirmed as part of the AG's evidence file. Patricia's words, all 6 of them, were now part of a permanent public record. I read the article at my kitchen table. The same table where I had first shown Derek the folder. The same table where Ellen had eaten soup with me the night I returned the ring. I thought about what Patricia had said from that stage. That is not a mother. That is trash. The auditor's report had a word for what she did. Fraud. 500 people now understood both things simultaneously. I found myself wondering which word stung her more. Patricia organized a press conference at the Carrington house in late June. Her PR firm erected a podium in the formal living room, the same room where I had first eaten salmon off fine china and listened to Patricia say how charming, with a smile that never reached her eyes. 3 local reporters, 2 cameras. Vivian had arranged a vase of white roses beside the podium, which struck me as a peculiar choice for what was essentially a damage containment exercise. I was not there. I heard about it through Georgia, who had heard from a reporter friend who recorded the entire event on her phone. Patricia stood at the podium in a cream blazer. Her hair was immaculate. Her voice held steady. She read from a prepared statement. This family has devoted 30 years to this community. The foundation's programs have served thousands of children, and now one disgruntled former fiancé with a personal agenda. A reporter from the Courant raised her hand. Mrs. Carrington, the AG's office has confirmed $340,000 in payments to a vendor that does not appear to exist. Can you explain Hartfield Consulting? Patricia blinked. That is a legitimate consulting firm that provided. It was registered to an account in your maiden name, Delanto. The Delaware LLC has no employees and no record of services rendered. The room went completely still. Patricia's mouth opened, then closed. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the podium. She attempted her laugh, the same high-pitched, practiced sound from the Gala. From that first dinner in Greenwich, from every moment she had used performance as a substitute for honesty. But this time it emerged broken, a fractured hollow sound that collapsed before it could finish. I have nothing further to say at this time, she managed. Vivian stepped forward and seized Patricia's arm. We're done here. This is a family matter. The reporter kept her camera rolling. The AG does not consider $340,000 a family matter, ma'am. Vivian's face went rigid. She steered Patricia toward the hallway. Howard sat in a chair near the back of the room. He did not stand. He did not speak. He stared at the floor the way he had stared at the carpet outside the board meeting, like a man quietly measuring the distance between who he used to be and who he had become. The press conference lasted 11 minutes. The footage aired that evening on 2 local stations. Derek came to my office the following day. He had no appointment. He walked past the reception desk and stood in my doorway with his tie loosened and his eyes red. My mother is facing charges, Ingrid. I set down my pen. Are you here to apologize or to blame me for what your mother did? He opened his mouth, closed it. Both. I do not know. You laughed, Derek. He flinched. She called my mother trash in front of 500 people into a microphone, and you laughed. I was nervous. Everyone was looking at us. Everyone was looking at my mother, and you chose your mother's side. Webb was at the desk behind mine. He had been there the entire time, quietly reviewing a client file. He looked up. That was the call, Webb said, his voice flat and measured. 10:47 Gala night. 3 words. Do it now. I filed the report with the AG at 11:15. Derek looked at Webb, then at me. His jaw worked as though searching for words that simply would not form. I loved you, he said. I know. Can we? No. He stood in the doorway for another 5 seconds. I counted them. Then he turned and walked down the hallway. He did not slam the door. He did not raise his voice. He simply left, the way people leave when they finally understand that the damage is irreversible and walking away is the only honest thing remaining. I picked up my pen and returned to my spreadsheet. Webb said nothing. He did not need to. We had both witnessed enough of other people's wreckage to recognize when a conversation had fully ended. Derek told me the rest of it later, months later, in a voicemail I almost did not play. After the press conference, Patricia sat alone in the darkened living room. The podium had been taken down. The white roses still sat on the table, slowly wilting. Howard had moved his belongings to the guest house that morning. Vivian had stopped answering her phone. Patricia sat in her husband's leather chair and told Derek something she had never spoken aloud to anyone. When I was 16, she said, your grandmother, your real grandmother, not the woman in the portrait, worked at a laundromat on Elm Street in Waterbury. She pressed other people's shirts for $4.50 an hour. I swore I would never go back to that. Derek waited. Your father's family looked at me the way I looked at Ellen. Like I was something to be tolerated. Like I was a project. Then why did you not stop? Derek asked. Because if I stopped, I would have had to admit that I was still that girl from the laundromat. And I could not. That was not an apology. It was a confession wrapped tightly in self-pity. Patricia understood the mechanics of what she had done. She had replicated the precise cruelty that had once been visited upon her. She could name it. She could trace its lineage. She simply could not accept responsibility for choosing to continue it. She was still in that darkened room. The girl from the laundromat, 61 years old, still running from a woman who pressed shirts. I felt something when Derek played me that voicemail. Not forgiveness, something smaller. Recognition. The way you come to understand why a building collapsed without forgiving the engineer who cut the corners. Patricia was human. That did not make her any less accountable. 2 in the morning. The phone lit up on my nightstand. Derek. I almost did not answer. My thumb hovered over the red button. Then I picked up. His voice was hoarse, worn to barely a whisper. I knew, he said. I knew about the money. I was scared. I sat up in bed and pulled the blanket around my shoulders. I know you were. I should have told you the truth 3 months earlier. I should have gone to the board myself. You should have done a great many things, Derek. A long silence. I could hear him breathing, the sound of someone sitting alone in a room they once shared with certainty. I loved you, Ingrid. I know. What do I do now? I stared at the ceiling. The streetlight outside cast a pale bar of light across the wall, and I watched it waver as a car passed below. I cannot answer that for you anymore. He did not argue. He did not plead. He simply breathed. Good night, Ingrid. Good night, Derek. I hung up, placed the phone face down on the nightstand, and lay in the darkness listening to the refrigerator hum quietly in the kitchen. I did not hate Derek. That would have been simpler. Hatred has momentum, direction, a target, a reason to rise in the morning with purpose. What I carried was quieter than that. Sadder. The particular grief you hold for someone who possessed everything required to be brave and consistently chose otherwise. He was not a villain. He was a coward. And sometimes that is harder to reconcile, because cowards leave you turning over the question of what might have been if they had simply stood up just once. I did not sleep that night, but I was at peace. The Connecticut Attorney General's office reached a settlement in September. Patricia repaid the full $340,000 plus an $85,000 civil penalty. No criminal charges, first offense, full cooperation following the board removal, and a demonstrated willingness to repay that her attorney negotiated as evidence of good faith. The AG accepted it. I accepted it too. Prison was never the point. The foundation restructured entirely. A new independent board, an external auditor, mandatory annual reviews. The after-school programs continued. The summer reading camps reopened. The children who depended on that funding kept receiving it, which was the only outcome that had ever truly mattered to me. Howard and Patricia remained married, which surprised no one who understood that their relationship had always been more of a contract than a partnership. The Carrington name was removed from the foundation's letterhead. It was renamed the Connecticut Community Youth Foundation. Patricia's photograph was taken off the newsletter. Vivian went quiet on social media and had not been seen at the country club since June. The gossip network she had weaponized against me fell silent, not because people forgot, but because the story she had circulated turned out to be the precise opposite of the truth, and no one wanted to be associated with a lie that had made the front page. Derek resigned from the foundation, sold his Stamford condominium, and relocated to Boston. He accepted a position at a smaller nonprofit that carried none of his family's name. He did not call. I did not expect him to. My clients returned. The two who had paused during Vivian's campaign came back without offering any explanation. 2 board members from the Carrington Foundation referred colleagues directly to my firm. My reputation, as it turned out, was considerably more durable than 72 hours of orchestrated gossip. October. Sunday morning. The air in Connecticut had turned sharp and clean the way it does when summer finally releases its hold. I drove to my mom's house. She was in the garden, kneeling in the soil with a pair of gloves and a trowel. The tomato plants she had mentioned back in June were finished now, bare stalks and dried leaves. But the mums were blooming, purple and gold lining the walkway like a small, quiet celebration. She wore the navy dress, the same one from the Gala, repurposed for church. The pearl brooch was still fastened above her heart. "Mom, I am sorry you went through that." She looked up from the garden, brushed the dirt from her knees, and stood. "I have been through worse," she said. "And you were there this time." She went inside to make coffee. I stayed in the garden for a moment, looking at the mums, feeling the October air move through the bare spaces where the tomatoes used to grow. I keep that brooch now. It sits in a small box on my desk beside my CPA certificate and a framed photograph of my mom at my college graduation, the one where she is squinting into the sunlight, holding my diploma like it weighs more than it does. $12. Goodwill clearance bin. Plastic pearls on a gold-toned pin. That is what genuine dignity costs. You do not owe them your peace, baby. She was right. I did not owe them my peace. But I owed her absolutely everything. Here is what I learned. The people who call others trash are usually the ones concealing the greatest mess. And the quietest person in the room is not always the weakest. Sometimes she is the one with the file. That is my story. One gala, one phone call, and a mother who deserved far better than a plastic brooch and a seat at table 14. If you have ever protected someone who could not protect themselves, share this video, drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.